cry.
Oh no.
Right, so yeah, Sarah said I joined in July 2016, and I think I took Sarah a little bit by surprise, and I have very much similar characteristics to both Sarah and Keely as well, where if something's put in front of me, I just have to try and go for it. So when my kit arrived, I think I got my kit in 5 days, and there was obviously the Passport to Success thing in there with the quick start incentives. That was just like a red rag to a bull to me. I had to go for them, and just kind of the whole mindset thing about believing that I would do them, although deep down at that point I wasn't really sure whether I would. So I had my youngest little boy was only 4 months old. My eldest had just turned 2. We had a very hectic home life, always very busy. But I was on maternity leave because he was only 4 months old, and I was really hating my job that I was in. I was in the hotel business, been in the business for 13 years. It was really, really, really stressful. It had run its course, and if I'm honest, I'd been in that job probably 3 or 4 years too long. And I just wanted out of there. I didn't like the environment I was in. I absolutely dreaded going to work, like pretty much every day. And I was really at quite a low point, and the thought of going back to work after my maternity leave was horrendous. Like, I wouldn't sleep at night, even though I was only 5 months into my maternity leave. The thought of going back, like 7 months later, I was getting so stressed and anxious about leaving the boys and just going back to that environment. I just didn't want to. So I got my kit after 5 days, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can do it. I knew at what point I had to hand my notice in if I wanted to, so I joined in July, and I would have had to have handed my notice in mid-December. Because of my length of service, I had to give them 3 months notice. So I set that as my goal. Didn't really tell Sarah that I was intending on doing that at all. And I'd had my kit 2 days when I got my first recruit. A little bit I say it was by accident, but it was intentional. So I'd posted in some Facebook selling sites, but never really expected anybody to join, because you see them all the time, like all these posts, and you never really think that anybody responds to them. But miraculously somebody did, and she joined after a day. So I had my first recruit 7 days into signing on the dotted line, and then I messaged Sarah and said, like, I've got my 1 recruit, why don't we try and do it in August? And I think you were perhaps a little bit like, oh my god, you're a bit crazy, woman. But just thought, well, why not? Like, try it and see what happens. So for that month of August, it was literally all I did. Like Usborne in between the boys, obviously, because I still had both boys at home. Whenever they went for a nap, whenever I could get an hour of them being occupied by CBeebies, that makes me sound like the worst mother in the world. But CBeebies was my friend for the month of August. Yeah, whenever I had any time, like, all my efforts were on recruiting. And I don't know how I managed to do it. But I'd had 1 recruit in July, and then I recruited a further 8 people in August. And so I promoted on £1,700 worth of volume that month. I had 6 active team members and a total of 9 in my team. Can I
ask, you recruited 8 people in the August, how many people do you think you spoke to in August to get those 8 people?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Just to give a perspective,
Yeah.
because sometimes people think, I've spoken to 20 people and no one's joined. So I can't, so then people think I can't be any good at this. But it's not that, is it? It's just a numbers game.
So I tend to tell people now, we've spoken about this, haven't we, that in order to get through your team leader promotion, even to just get your 4, which is the minimum that you need to be talking to about 150 people in order to get through your promotion, to get enough people signed. I knew that I needed the 4, but I wanted to try and have a bit of a buffer, because I knew it's relatively difficult to promote on, like you did amazingly well, to promote on 4 people. That's like really tough. I had 9, and we only just hit the volume then, so I like to give myself a bit of a buffer. And because I was obviously so early into my journey as well, I was still going for my kit boost and kit refund, so my personal volume that month was relatively good. It was nearly £600, so I had that as a bit of a buffer as well, so there wasn't so much needed from the rest of my team. So that's a bit about the moment I realised I wanted it. As I say, my driver was not wanting to go back to work and being able to be there for my boys. The actions that I took to promote was literally just eating, breathing, sleeping Usborne for that entire month. It was a lot of work, and I've had the same as you, Keely, that you joined at the right time and you were lucky and that, but people don't see the effort and the time, the things that it takes, the steps that you have to put in place to get there. Challenges that I went through, it was really hard. I'm not going to lie, it really wasn't easy to get there that month. Although I ended up with 9 team members, I had 3 recruits who didn't do the sign up properly, so 2 of them ended up going through head office and were assigned as head office downloads to other team people. And one lady who had spoken to me for 3 weeks by messenger, email and on the phone, who hadn't told me that she had a friend that did Usborne who was relatively new herself, and then she ended up joining with her friend. So it was 3 people who I'd had meant to have on my team that didn't. And I remember speaking to, because one of them ended up being under Joe Hayden, and at the time it felt like the absolute end of the world. It was awful. But it goes back to the mindset thing, just knowing that, you know, those 2 people that were an accident signing up on head office, or I hadn't communicated it properly, whatever the reason was, it wasn't personal, it was just one of those things that happened.
And also you'd be able to use the failing to learn from, and you'd never let that happen again.
No, never let it happen again. So when I did actually promote, it felt amazing, and I saw like the possibility in it then, and just kind of decided to run with it. I think it's really easy to, once you get your promotion, to then sit back and relax and take your foot off the pedal. But for me, I knew that Sarah obviously being a massive inspiration, I wanted my business to look like Sarah's business does. And so I knew that you can't sit back. Yes, I allowed myself a couple of days to like celebrate and just recoup and like refresh myself and things, but I was then thinking about what the next steps were after that. I do see it quite often that people promote, they take their foot off the gas, they lose momentum, and then they don't then go on to do it, and then they're clawing back again, trying to get back up to where they want to be, which is fine if that's a situation that you choose to be in and you're happy with it. But for me, that wasn't an option. I wanted to replicate Sarah's business. And then in the December, I was able to hand my notice in. Very proud that I've qualified every month since. I've obviously never been out of gold, touch wood, Camilla, no pressure. And yeah, it's just, so I'm now a divisional leader. I've got, last count, I think it was about 35 personal team. So my personal team is by no means the biggest of any business that's here. But I've got 240 in my downline in total. Again, which is not by any means the biggest. Sarah, you've got what, 1,200-ish?
Something like that.
Yeah, so it just shows that you can do it. And it's really just about then duplicating your business. Caroline has a massive chunk of my downline, and I've never been more proud. Yes, I've achieved the travel incentives. India was amazing. St. Petersburg's going to be awesome. But the fact that I get to take Caroline with me, and you need to speak to Caroline. She works as a teacher. Caroline has this as her hobby, and yet she's in gold consistently every month and has won the travel incentive. So if you think you have to have it as a proper business, you really don't, because it can be your hobby and you can still be as successful as the people that do have it as their business. I know that Marianne's going to be with us in Cuba next year. That's her goal. So yeah, it's just